My grandfather stood up at family dinner and told everyone I'd been collecting disability checks for 10 years. I hadn't. But apparently, someone had. The fork in my cousin's hand stopped midair. My aunt's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. 20 people at that table, and suddenly the only sound was the kitchen clock ticking on the wall behind me. "What are you talking about?" I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Grandpa didn't answer. He just looked at the man standing behind him, some guy in a suit I'd never seen before, and nodded. The man opened a folder. My mom stared at her plate like she could disappear into it. My dad wouldn't look at me at all. That's when I knew. Whatever was in that folder, my parents already knew about it. I should back up. You need to understand how I got to that dinner table in the first place. You need to understand what my family was like. I grew up in a house where silence moved faster than truth. My parents, Barbara and Brian, liked things a certain way, neat, predictable, under control. I learned pretty early that the easiest way to keep the peace was to make myself smaller, quieter, easier to forget about. My younger sister Violet never had to learn that trick. She walked into rooms and people noticed. When she wanted something, it showed up. When she struggled with anything, someone fixed it before she even had to ask. My dad used to say, "She just needs a little extra support." Support was apparently the one thing I never qualified for. I was 12 the first time I really felt it in my gut. I came home with a permission slip for a field trip, $35. My mom was paying bills at the kitchen table. She barely glanced up. "We can't do extras this month, Rose." 10 minutes later, Violet ran in with a flyer for dance classes. Same kitchen. Same pile of bills. My mom smiled at her. "Of course, sweetheart." I stood there holding that permission slip, watching my mom write the check for Violet's dance classes. The pen moved across the paper so easily. No hesitation. No second thought. I folded the permission slip in half, then in half again, until it was small enough to fit in my pocket. I never brought it up again. Never asked twice. That's what I learned that day. Some kids get to ask twice. That's how it worked in our house. 2 kids. 2 completely different realities. One truth nobody ever said out loud. By high school, it got worse. Violet's laptop cracked, and my dad ordered her a new one that same day. When mine stopped working, he told me to use the library. Violet got private tutors for subjects she didn't like. I got told to work harder. It wasn't mean, exactly. It was just the way things were. I remember sitting in the library after school, waiting for a computer to open up. Sometimes I'd wait an hour, maybe more. I'd watch other kids come and go with their own laptops, and I'd think about Violet at home, probably watching Netflix on her brand new screen. I never let myself get angry about it. Anger felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Then I turned 19, and everything changed. I was working part-time at a grocery store, stocking shelves, trying to save for community college. One afternoon, I slipped on wet tile in the back room. Went down hard. My back took the worst of it. I thought I'd be fine. You always think you'll be fine when you're 19. But weeks passed, and the pain didn't leave. It settled in like it planned to stay. I moved slower after that. Lifted things carefully. Started buying over-the-counter pain medication and stretching every bottle as far as it would go. The first time I had to call out of work because I couldn't stand up straight, my manager sighed into the phone. "This is becoming a pattern, Rose." It wasn't a pattern. It was my back failing me at 19. But I apologized anyway. Said it wouldn't happen again. Showed up the next day even though every step felt like glass grinding between my vertebrae. I showed my mom the first prescription the doctor gave me. I thought she'd be worried. She just sighed. "You need to be tougher, Rose. Don't depend on anyone." That sentence became a rule stitched into everything I did after that. Don't ask. Don't lean. Don't expect help. College made the gap even wider. Violet went to a private university across town. My mom bragged about it to everyone, neighbors, relatives, the lady at the post office. I went to community college and worked nights at a warehouse. When I couldn't afford textbooks, I dropped classes. When Violet's schedule didn't work out, my parents hired someone to help her figure it out. I remember the semester I had to drop Intro to Psychology. I'd already attended 3 weeks of classes. Already done the reading. The textbook cost $180, and I just didn't have it. I went to the professor after class and asked if there was a payment plan or a used copy somewhere. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. "The bookstore has used copies," she said. They did. For $160. I dropped the class the next day. Violet changed her major twice. Never dropped a single class. There's one memory that stayed with me more than the others. I came home from work one night, and my back hurt so bad it felt like someone had shoved a knife between my ribs. I put my last prescription bottle on the kitchen counter, 2 pills left, maybe 3 days if I was careful. My mom was making dinner. Seasoning chicken. She didn't turn around. "Can you help me cover this?" I asked, tapping the bottle. She kept cutting. "You're stronger than this, Rose. Don't be dramatic." Behind her, the kitchen glowed with brand new appliances they'd bought that spring. Stainless steel. Spotless. Untouched by anything that looked like struggle. I stood there under that dim overhead light, holding a bottle that rattled empty, and I finally got it. Effort didn't matter. Pain didn't matter. Need didn't matter. Only hierarchy did. I didn't cry. Didn't argue. Just nodded and put the bottle back in my bag. That night, I took half a pill instead of a whole one. Made it last. Worked my shift the next day bent at an angle that made customers look at me funny. Nobody asked if I was okay. I got good at looking okay. That was the day I learned exactly where I fit in my family. So when my grandfather called that dinner, I wasn't expecting anything good. Family dinners were never good for me. But I went. I always went. It was easier than dealing with the fallout if I didn't. The dining room felt smaller than I remembered. Warm lights. Long table. My parents sat in the center where they always did, surrounded by aunts and uncles who mattered to them. Violet sat next to my mom, whispering something that made them both laugh. I watched the way their shoulders relaxed around each other. That kind of comfort had never included me. Grandpa sat at the far end. He wasn't eating. He was just watching me, his jaw tight, his eyes sharp like he was looking for confirmation of something he hoped wasn't true. The man with the folder stood behind him. I didn't know who he was, but I knew he wasn't family. His posture was too straight. Too official. Dinner moved along. Small talk. Compliments about the food. Violet talking about her next vacation while my parents nodded like they'd planned every detail. I kept my hands in my lap, fingers locked together to keep them from shaking. Then Grandpa said it again. Slower this time. Calmer. "You've been getting disability payments for years." The table went quiet. My cousin looked confused. Violet looked annoyed, like the interruption was inconvenient. I felt something heavy drop inside my chest. Not fear. Not even anger. Just the slow, sinking realization that everyone in that room knew more about my life than I did. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Nobody answered. Not one person. The man with the folder stepped forward. And I understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was something real. I excused myself, stood up, pushed my chair back, and walked out. Nobody tried to stop me. That was the weird part. You'd think someone would say something. Ask where I was going. But the conversation just started back up behind me like nothing had happened. I stood in the hallway for a second, staring at a framed photo on the wall. My parents and Violet. Perfect lighting. Perfect smiles. I wasn't in it. I'd seen that photo 100 times, but that night it hit different. That night I realized it wasn't an accident. They'd chosen that photo, hung it in the main hallway where everyone could see it. A family of 3. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My balance stared back at me. Small. Predictable. Honest. I scrolled through the past year. Nothing unusual. No random deposits. No disability payments. Nothing. I typed an email right there in the hallway. Fingers steady. Hello, I'm writing to request a full history of disability payments issued under my name. Please confirm all addresses on file. Thank you. No drama. No explanation. Just a question that should have been mine to ask 10 years ago. When I walked back into the dining room, I didn't sit down. I just stood near the door and watched. Grandpa was still at his end of the table, arms crossed. The man with the folder, Wallace, I'd find out later, was still standing. My parents were pretending nothing was wrong. Violet was on her phone. I could have yelled. Could have demanded answers. But confrontation was their language, not mine. Silence had always been my survival tool. Now it could be something else. Now it could be control. I picked up my coat and slipped it on. Grandpa noticed. His eyes softened just a little, but he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He already knew I wasn't leaving because I was scared. I was leaving to build something. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I walked to the end of the driveway, gravel crunching under my shoes. I pulled out the stack of receipts I always carried, years of co-pays, prescriptions, clinic visits. Every single one paid by me. Not $1 of help. When I got back to my apartment in Seattle that night, I spread everything on the floor. Receipts. Bills. Letters. My little notebook where I tracked every expense. I sat cross-legged and started organizing. Categorizing. Building a timeline. I didn't need to know why my parents did what they did. I just needed the facts. Facts don't lie. Facts don't play favorites. I made a spreadsheet, filled it with dates and numbers, added a column for the estimated disability payments I should have received. When I looked up the monthly amount and multiplied it by 10 years, I didn't feel shocked. I just felt the weight of the truth finally settling into place. The number was $280,000. I stared at it for a long time. Tried to imagine what my life would have looked like with even a fraction of that money. Would I have finished college? Would my back have gotten proper treatment before the damage became permanent? Would I have felt like I mattered? Around midnight, my email dinged. The benefits office had responded. They'd look into it. I stared at the screen, then at the papers scattered around me. I whispered to the empty room, I'm not fixing what they broke. The next day, I went back to my parents' house. Cars lined the street like someone was hosting a party. I stood at the edge of the driveway, letting the cold air settle over me. My breath came out in thin clouds that disappeared almost instantly. That felt about right. Inside, the dining room looked the same. Same warm light. Same table. My parents in the center. Violet next to my mom. Grandpa at the far end. And Wallace, the man with the folder, standing behind him. Nobody greeted me. Let's get this done, Grandpa said. His voice was flat, formal. The warmth he usually had was gone. My mom shifted in her seat. Dad, can we not do this right now? Rose is clearly. He raised one hand. She went silent. This isn't about Rose, he said. This is about what was taken from her. My dad cleared his throat, trying to sound calm. We didn't take anything. There's been a misunderstanding. Wallace stepped forward, opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper cut through the room like a knife. Inside were 10 years of documents, organized by year, payment records, my name at the top, an address underneath, my parents' address. Wallace placed the first sheet on the table, then another, then another. Same pattern every time. Monthly deposits. Same signature at the bottom. My mother's. These payments were issued to support Rose's medical condition, Wallace said quietly. Every deposit was rerouted to this household instead of her residence. My mom's face went pale. Violet stopped scrolling. My dad leaned back, arms crossed tight like he was bracing for something. We used that money for the family, he muttered. For your vacations? Wallace asked. For the remodel? For the SUV you bought 5 years ago? My mom blinked fast. We had expenses. Violet's school wasn't cheap. The room pressed in on itself. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Every number on those pages said more than I ever could. Wallace placed another sheet down. Bank statements. I saw the deposits clear as day. Monthly. Consistent. For 10 years. Then I saw the withdrawals. Payments to Violet's university. Payments to contractors. Payments to luxury car dealerships. My name at the top of every deposit. Their names on every withdrawal. Wallace placed the final sheet on the table. A summary. 10 years of monthly deposits, totaling more than $280,000. I watched my parents' faces shift. Denial first, then calculation, then something hollow and brittle. Grandpa pushed his chair back. The sound echoed. He pointed at my parents. Anything to say? The question didn't come out angry. It landed cold and flat, like a verdict. My mom's voice cracked. We thought she didn't need it. She's always been so independent. You told everyone she was irresponsible, Grandpa said. You let her go without medication. You let her work through pain so you could upgrade your kitchen. My dad looked at me. His eyes darted between fear and something that might have been shame. We were going to tell you. Eventually. When you asked. That line made something in me snap. Not into anger. Into clarity. They'd waited for me to ask. For 10 years, they'd waited for me to somehow figure out that money with my name on it was being stolen. Like it was my job to catch them. Silence filled the room. The kind that doesn't ease. It just tightens. I stood there, hands folded in front of me, my canvas bag hanging at my side. I felt strangely light. Not victorious. Not angry. Just present. Finally in a moment that wasn't built on someone else's story. Wallace closed the folder. The accounts linked to these deposits will be frozen pending investigation. Rose will be contacted directly regarding restitution. My mom's breath hitched. My dad's shoulders slumped. Grandpa turned to me. You don't have to stay here. You don't owe them anything. I nodded. Not to him. To myself. I picked up my coat and slipped it on. No goodbye. No final words. Just the soft sound of my footsteps as I walked out. Behind me, the silence finally broke. Not with shouting. Just with the sound of people realizing the truth had already picked its side. Grandpa drove me home. The road stretched ahead in long, dark lines. Street lights slid across the windshield, cutting my reflection into pieces. I watched each piece pass and disappear, like I was shedding something I'd carried too long. He didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't fill the car with apologies or outrage. He just let the quiet sit there. It felt unfamiliar, almost too gentle. When he stopped in front of my building, he left the engine running. They won't touch another dollar, he said. His voice wasn't angry, just final. I nodded, fingers brushing the strap of my bag. Inside was the folder Wallace had given me before we left. Copies of everything. My name printed where it belonged. My address missing from every line. Proof of how easy it had been to erase me. I stepped out and walked toward the front door. The hallway light flickered overhead the same way it always did. But tonight, it didn't bother me. It felt honest. Imperfect, but mine. Inside my apartment, I set the folder on the counter. The papers fanned slightly at the edges, catching the faint hum of the refrigerator. I thought about the kitchen I grew up in. The polished appliances. The bright lights. The empty prescription bottle I used to hide in my bag. I stood there, breathing slow, letting the memory drift without holding on to it. This time, the silence didn't feel like something pressed onto me. It felt like air, like I finally had room to breathe. I kept the folder on my table overnight. In the morning, I looked at it again. Nothing in it asked me to forgive or forget. It only asked me to see things as they were. Boundaries aren't loud. They're not dramatic. They're just the quiet places where you stop letting other people write your story. Over the next few weeks, things moved fast. The benefits office confirmed everything. 10 years of payments. Every single one deposited into my parents' account. They'd forged documents, changed the mailing address, built an entire system to make sure I never knew. The restitution process started. Lawyers got involved. My parents tried to call a few times. I didn't answer. Violet sent a text saying I was tearing the family apart. I blocked the number. Grandpa checked in every few days. Never pushy. Just there. He told me he'd suspected something was wrong for years but didn't have proof until he hired Wallace to look into it. He said he was sorry he didn't act sooner. I told him it wasn't his fault. And I meant it. The money started coming back in chunks. Not all at once, but enough to change things. I paid off medical debt I'd been carrying for years. I bought medication without checking my bank account first. I stopped calculating whether I could afford to eat and take my prescriptions in the same week. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't surviving. I was just living. The first time I went to the pharmacy and didn't have to ask about generic options or payment plans, I almost cried right there at the counter. The pharmacist handed me the bag, and I just stood there holding it. Full bottles. A month's supply. No rationing. No math. Just medicine. I didn't go back to my parents' house. Didn't attend family dinners. Didn't show up for holidays. Some relatives reached out, asking what happened. I kept it simple. Told them the truth. Some believed me. Some didn't. I stopped caring either way. Violet graduated that spring. I wasn't invited. I didn't expect to be. My mom sent one letter. I opened it, read the first line, "We only wanted what was best for the family," and threw it away. There was nothing in there I needed to hear. I started therapy a few months later. Not because I was falling apart. Because I wanted to understand how I'd spent so many years thinking I was the problem. My therapist helped me see it clearly. My parents didn't take that money because they were struggling. They took it because they could. Because I'd been trained my entire life not to ask questions. Not to demand better. It took me a long time to stop feeling guilty about cutting them off. Guilt has a way of lingering, even when you know you're doing the right thing. But eventually, it faded. And what replaced it wasn't anger. It was just peace. I moved out of that apartment a year later. Found a better place with windows that didn't rattle and a hallway light that didn't flicker. I hung photos on the walls, my friends, my life, moments that belonged to me. I didn't hang a single picture of my family. Grandpa came over the day I moved in. Brought groceries and helped me set up furniture. We didn't talk about my parents. We didn't need to. He just asked how I was doing, and I told him the truth. I was doing okay. Better than okay. He smiled. Said he was proud of me. That moment meant more than 10 years of stolen money ever could. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy. I tell it because I know there are people out there living in families that don't see them. Families that take more than they give. Families that make you feel like asking for help is the same as being weak. You're not weak. You're not dramatic. You're not asking for too much. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't see that, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. I did. And I'd do it again. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others who needs to hear it. Comment below to share your thoughts and subscribe for more stories about finding your strength when the people closest to you let you down. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the one you're meant to keep.